Again, that Dr. Rafael. So yes, we're moving on to the next keynote presentation. The presentation will be from Mr. Segun Daini, who is the BSc manager for West Africa from Fortinet. Mr. Segun, the stage is yours. And yes, Fortinet is one of our gold partners for the event. And yes, Mr. Segun Daini, who represents Fortinet.
But briefly, I think about two main points that I would like to process here. So, but before we get into that, I want to take us back, to the beginning, how it all started. That's important. Some of the capabilities we have is digital risk protection service. Part of what we do is, go to those dark web and take action and bring to your notice any of such conversation that is happening or anyone planning to come and attack you. The external attack surface management, the brand protection, basically rogue apps, credential typo spotting, and all of that. Now, play smart. For play smart, so the key thing here is threat intelligence. So it's very, very important. Threat intelligence. But beyond that is deploy deception technologies. So there are deception technologies we can deploy. So those deception technologies would help you to, have more visibility and catch the bad actors. In fact, it's very good for insider threat. When you deploy services, decoy services, basically, around the network and people are interacting with those services. So you can have that information and, of course, feed that into your threat intelligence, and because it's a platform, then we're saying win faster, and this is where the automation thing comes in. So it's important that we deploy AI as well. I would like to stop here. Of course, it's the platform. Let's continue to think platform. Thank you very much. If there are any questions, I'll take it.
None? Is there any questions? All right.
Thanks for your presentation. It's nice to hear vendors talk about building platforms that can serve the needs of organizations. One of the things that concerns me is that when you talk about these multiple platforms or multiple systems that we have and how we can consolidate them, the issue comes to mind is budget, money. How do we make the business case to go and decommission something we've bought quite a lot of money and try to get a consolidated platform, a consolidated application or system, right? So my question is, are vendors like you having conversations with other vendors how to integrate what we have right now, right, versus leaving what we have and going to buy a consolidated platform or application? That's one.
Yeah, thank you very much. So it's a very, very valid question, and I think I repeated that quite a few. So we're not saying throw away what you have today, but going forward, because it's a journey, so if you're making any investment, if there's a new investment you need to make, now that decision should not be in isolation of what you have. So what you then need to begin to look at is what will now work with what you have. So for example, you may have an identity access management system already in place. But now you want to deploy a work from home solution. Now that solution should be able to work with, what you have. You have a 2FA solution. Now you don't need to go and buy a separate 2FA solution to work with another solution that you use to deploy. So those are the key things. So in moving forward, you would begin to take those into consideration in evaluating the technologies you deploy to ensure that, yes, they can work with what you have as much as possible. Then by the time it's time to refresh the old ones that you have, then you have more room as, the budget constraint there will not, so you have justification to then, further enhance that platform. But the key thing is not look at it from product point of view, but from use cases. So for this particular use case, this is what you want, this is where you are today, then you now build how you will get there. So it won't happen in one day. Yeah.
And so my follow-up is, as we consolidate, my fear is single point of failure. If I have multiple solutions, right? If one fails, I have the other ones that work perfectly. But as we consolidate now, what happens when there's a malfunction?
Okay, so the platform is not talking of convergence. So the convergence is when you bring multiple solutions out and you bring a single solution to replace those multiple solutions. So that's not what we're saying. So you still have multiple solutions, just that those solutions are intelligent enough to continue to interact. So for example, the VPN solution that we have today. Now, when you connect to the VPN, you probably authenticate. So it tries to identify if you're the user. Now, it checks your username, your password. If you have a token, it checks it. And then it gives you blanket access to the network. Now, but if you look at Zero Trust, what that does is, yes, you're doing authentication. Now, you're also doing, for VPN also, you can check the antivirus on the system. So at that point where you're connecting, you check the status, whether the system is vulnerable, whether there's an AV installed, so you can check so many things, posture validation, so you can do that. But it is done once. Now, the other difference is, now you have an engine that checks that posture. It also happens for your VPN. Now, but because you're not doing ZTNA, now with ZTNA, now it's not just at the point of connecting, but it's continuous. So that means that if that user that connects, the policy is saying the AV must be running, and the AV is running. Now, if along the line, the user stops the AV from running, now that automation, that Zero Trust engine will communicate to the VPN gateway. And at that point, the VPN gateway will terminate that connection. So there is a continuous handshake between them, which is different from what used to happen. So what used to happen, that communication is not there. So, and that's what the platform is about. So you still have those products, right, just that they are not communicating. So you are now having better security, basically.
I was just worried about when you automate, you decrease human interaction, and when that automation fails to communicate from one application to the next, then there's a gap right there. Because before, you used to check in 4 different applications, but now because they're interconnected and there's a message from here to there, if that fails, I'm sitting and hoping that, I'm not, because it happens where there was a security breach in one of the second largest retailer in the U.S. And because when we set the threshold on the logs, we were seeing the same thing every day, and we were like, oh, it's the same thing, right? And there wasn't communication. But that same thing was already had malicious software in our system for 4 weeks. We didn't know until the FBI came and said, hey, these guys are moving data by the billions. So when you rely on automation, when it fails, you're sitting there thinking, okay, so since I have not had an alert, nothing is going on. Everything is fine. That's my fear, right?
It's valid, right? But I think there's no general response, right? So it's just a use case by use case thing. And from what we've also, some of the solutions we deploy for customers, it depends on the policy, and that's key. You always start with policy. So all these solutions basically is to enforce whatever policy the business has. So if there's a human interaction that is needed, yes, we can build that into that platform and say, for this to happen, or if you need to lock out an account, for example, then it needs to be approved. So the machine brings it out, but it's not going to lock it out. So it's going to wait for the authorization, before that happens. But yes, it's a very valid feedback. Okay.
Due to time constraint, I think we should be good with this question. In fact, yes, we have Fortinet, who are a gold partner. You have their booth right outside. In fact, once you step out, you could see Fortinet networking space. So you feel free to ask them, put your questions across. We have a team of Fortinet experts who are there ready to answer your questions. And yes, thank you so much. And this was Mr. Segun Daini from Fortinet, who is the network security evangelist with extensive experience in solving business problems with technology. I'm sure his presentation was interesting and thoughtful. Thank you, Mr. Segun.